Hey everyone, Brandon Cooper here from photographyforrealestate.net. I think we can all agree as professional real estate photographers, we're always looking for that next product or service or technology that could help set us apart from our competition and grow our business. Our mandate at PFRE is to help real estate photographers be successful. And one of the ways we do that is by keeping you up to date and informed on products and technologies that are available to our industry. I recently got the opportunity to catch up with Kevin Klages, who's the co-founder and CEO of Planitar. Planitar is the maker of the iGuide camera system, which uses lasers and visual data to document a property. So it will do room dimensions, area square footage, scaled floor plans, and 3D virtual tours. Now, I'm not going to lie, I'm not the most technical person in the world, but 3D tours, floor plans, measurements, these are all things that are becoming quite important in my market. So I got a lot of really good information from Kevin, and I hope that you do too.
Kevin, in a nutshell, I guess it's kind of hard to summarize in a few words, but basically, what is iGuide? Give me a little bit of an idea about what the technology is, a little sort of history on the company, how you guys got started in all this.
Okay, thanks, Brandon. In a nutshell, iGuide is a property mapping technology. It combines a camera that we've created with software that we've created. And the whole purpose of iGuide is to quickly and efficiently go into a space and capture a tremendous amount of spatial and visual data that we translate into floor plans, room measurements, floor area calculations, 3D virtual tours, and photographs.
So, okay, so that's sort of on the technical side of things. Now, when it comes to actually sort of the company in general, who is iGuide? What are you guys all about? Give me a little sense of your history, your mission, some of the goals for the future.
Absolutely. Well, I co-founded iGuide with my business partner, Alex. We got involved, started working together on the technology in 2012. My background is in architecture, engineering, construction. So I was working in cost engineering at the very beginning. Alex, he's really the brains behind the hardware and the software. He's a physicist focused primarily in metrology and optics. So we came together. I had the pain and he had the solution. We started working on it, developing it. At the time, we were developing it for the architecture, engineering, construction space. That was a focus. That's what I was interested in. And then through working with a local technology accelerator center here in Kitchener, Waterloo, called Communitech, we came to recognize and appreciate the opportunities in the real estate space. So in June of 2013, we launched our first pilot in our local market to see if realtors, there was an appetite for what we had developed. And there certainly was. The results were overwhelming. So in June of 2014, Alex and I left our permanent jobs for the world of startup and created iGuide and started building our own real estate photography business with our iGuide system.
Cool. So when you say testing to see if there's an appetite for the technology, and you recognize that there was, where was the bulk of that appetite coming from?
Well, we finished our initial target for that first 12-month period was 80 iGuides. That would have been proof of concept. And when we finished that first 12 months, we were actually closer to 900. And we looked at where did all these iGuides come from, and easily 800 of them were from realtors. Realtors from across the region. Another 100 came from the property rental space, so apartment management, student housing, which was a surprise. That wasn't even a category that we were looking at. But when I look at where the bulk of the real estate iGuides came from, we had managed to pick up the vast majority of high-producing, top-performing agents in the region.
So the agents themselves were purchasing the technology, or so was it both? Was it mostly for the photography side of it, or was it more on the measuring side?
primarily it was on the measuring side. You know, virtual tours, as you and your members probably know, there was virtual tours have been around for the better part of 20 years. Those traditional 360 spins, and sure, there was a market for it, but it wasn't huge. There wasn't a big market for virtual tours. What we did find was there was a big appetite for our measuring and square footage services. You know, it was something that agents wanted to see us do. It was a service that at least in our local market was required. Agents were required to enter square footage and room measurements in their listings. So that's where we primarily focused, and we would talk about where we offer a virtual tour and floor plans with our measuring and mapping services.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes a lot of sense, and it brings up a question that I had a while ago about when it comes to, because I'm based in Alberta.
Yep.
And a lot of our readership is going to be in the US and the UK and Australia and stuff like that. And I don't know if there's measurement standards in place yet for those folks. Here, every house has to be measured to a specific standard, and it's not easy. It's pretty complicated stuff. So it's becoming a much more demand in my market and in areas in Alberta. I don't know how much demand there is yet in other locations, and I know they might be moving in that direction. But two questions. Number one, do you know of any measurement standards that are going to be put in place from other jurisdictions around Canada, around the US, the UK, stuff like that? The other side to that question is, what kind of restrictions are there with the technology? And I don't want to get too deep into the tech side of things, but there are the services out there that have scanning capabilities and stuff like that, but they max out at, say, 10,000 square feet or 15,000 square feet. Do you guys have those types of restrictions? Or I guess what the question is, how much space can you measure with the technology?
Yeah, well, to answer the first one around measurement standards, yes, Alberta imposed what they call the residential measurement standard, and it was very progressive in Alberta to not only require that measurements in areas be placed on all listings. That's the first large government body that I've seen that have imposed that restrictions. But what Alberta has done that was a lot better than any other place I've seen that has mandated that standard or mandated that measurements and square footage be there. They mandated a standard for doing it, where they created a residential measurement standard, and they also educated the agents on what that standard is and how it works. So a lot of times when I talk to agents and boards and associations from across Canada and the US, I say we're not pushing or pursuing mandatory measurements in areas if you don't have some sort of standard or position in place. Like, you can't punish the kids if they don't know what the rules are. So that's great. And that is something that we're seeing happen across Canada, and even these conversations are happening in the United States. I know Alex is part of RISO, and there's tremendous interest and appetite for, at the most basic level, defining the language that's used around room measurements and square footage. And I'll even jump in here to say, for your audience in Europe and Australia, North Americans are relatively far behind when it comes to this sort of information. Like, it is common practice and even mandatory that when you list a property for sale, and we've got teams in Australia with the iGuide system, floor plans are an expectation. Square footage is an expectation. Room measurements is an expectation. In North America, it's not an expectation. But we're moving towards that, and you're seeing that through some of the research that's coming out from the likes of Zillow and NAR and JD Power, that there's tremendous appetite from the buyers to have access to this information, and now the governing bodies and the associations are trying to put systems in place to make that information accessible.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense because I think there's a lot more. There's been issues. I know in my market, in my area, there's been issues with liabilities when it comes to, prior to the RMS standards being put into place in Alberta, agents would pull a listing from the last listing or two listings ago, and they would go off of that square footage. My company offers measurement services, and so when we first got started, we were pulling blueprints from the city just to try and verify a few things as we were going, and we found right out of the gate, not a single one of them measures the actual square footage that's listed for sale. So there's so many gray areas there, and there's so many variables involved. Measurement, at least in my opinion, and again, like you said, it's fairly progressive in Alberta in terms of adding that, and I think a lot of that comes from some liability and some lawsuits that have happened.
Yep.
But I have no doubt in my mind that it won't be long before realtors are really held accountable for the square footage that they are putting on their listings before they offer them up for sale.
Well, the hard part, and what Alberta has realized, and I think everybody, and I'll speak specifically to North America, and even US in particular, where you've now got these AVMs, automated valuation models. So you've got the Zestimate, you've got a Redfin that's got theirs, and people are wanting to know a rough idea of what is my home worth, and that is based on the actual square footage. And whether it's property tax records or whatever else, the only real number that's available out there for the consumer is a number that was created before the space was even built. It is the architect's plans, it is the architectural drawings that they submit to the city and for permits and what have you. So that number is then grabbed, and that number with the internet and all this sharing of property data that's happening now, that number is carrying right through the system. And in a lot of cases, that's fine. For a lot of the purposes for that number, it's sufficient. But the problem where the buck stops in real estate, and I'm called out and asked to speak on a number of occasions for associations and boards helping educate realtors about this number, is the problem is the realtor is really the first person that is selling an actual space for that existing home. So the builder, even for that first-time home buyer, that person buying that new home, they're buying an idea. They're not actually buying a constructed space. But the next time that property goes up for sale, that realtor is now selling an actual space. So that number has got to be accurate or reliable. And that's where, as you saw in Alberta, that flurry of lawsuits is the reliability of that number. And everybody in the real estate industry has more or less been sharing that number without actually knowing what's in it, and knowing full well that it's probably not that reliable. So what they wind up doing is disclaimers and warrants to say we're not responsible for this number. But in Alberta, your regulators, the Real Estate Council of Alberta, recognize that buyers are expecting that number to be reliable and to be consistent. Like they ran research, and the buyers are assuming that number's reliable. So they imposed for the industry, hey, look, you have to provide these people with a reliable number. And that is something that we're seeing happening throughout North America.
Yeah, and if it's not there now, I think it's not far away. Because let's be honest here. I mean, if you're a home buyer and you're looking at a property, you should be able to trust the numbers that you're looking at.
Well, and kind of like our iGuide itself, it doesn't need to be mandated by the government in order to become an industry standard. Like when we first started out, nobody was using floor plans, and they were not commonplace. The only floor plans you would ever see were those architectural plans that maybe it's from the original builder that somebody found and carried forward. But now in market after market that we've gone into in Canada, floor plans are consistently demanded from sellers. Are you going to do a floor plan for my home? Because of the house down the street, they had floor plans done, and we know quantifiably that is one of the things that buyers are looking for when they're searching for a home. So yeah, we're well on our way to having these things become just generally accepted standards from the marketplace that agents are going to start demanding as well.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. With everybody shopping online, any information you can put up there to help them understand the home as much as possible benefits the agent because those guys aren't wasting time showing a bunch of tire kickers around. It benefits the home seller so they're not leaving their property 6 times a day for someone who doesn't really know what they're showing up to see. So that I can see the benefits sort of full circle there.
Well, and that's really when Alex and I decided we're going to get into real estate. The one thing that threw us is you're going out and you're buying a $30,000 car. The person on the lot is telling you about your fuel economy. It's telling you about your cubic trunk space, and it's telling you about the size of the engine. Like, it is specs driven. But you go out and you're buying a $550,000 average single detached house in Canada, and the realtor is, well, it's not so much about the number, it's more about how does it feel. You're like, no, it's not about how it feels. I'm paying real dollars for real space. I am buying a thing. It's not about how it feels. It's what is that thing that I'm buying, and really that's where this information comes in and becomes so important. So Alex and I looked at, wow, here's a great way for us to really make an impact by making this sort of information affordable for agents and accessible to the general public.
So I've got a basic idea of kind of what iGuide's all about in terms of technology and that kind of thing. But if you could summarize for me, who iGuide is, what you guys are all about. I think we dabbled a bit on the history already, but maybe a bit of an idea of what the mission is and future goals.
Absolutely. Like any technology, you want to be disruptive. You want to change the way things are being done today. So our culture is all about mapping the world. We want to see floor plans, room measurements, floor areas for every home. Now I'll speak North America, but we are in Europe and we are in Australia, so we do want to map the world. But at the end of the day, we would like to see this iGuide information, floor plans, measurements, areas available for every home anywhere that is an actual built space. So that is our mission. What our goals are is to build out and gain this through our network of operators, North American wide and worldwide. So have people working with our camera systems, working with us, marching into battle to take on the real estate marketplace and offer up floor plans, measurements, and areas in 3D tours.
Okay, so the next question I have here is why should I offer iGuide technology in my real estate photography business? So I guess the question is, as real estate photographers, we're often looking for the next product or service or technology that can help set us apart from our competition and grow our business. So what can iGuide bring to the table to help me do that?
Well, I think quite simply what iGuide can do is provide additional services while you're going out on that shoot. We again are dealing with real estate photographers day in, day out, helping them build and grow their business. And the one thing that I hear from, well, I guess it break it up into two sections. If you're new to real estate photography or looking to get into it, in all likelihood, there are at least a dozen would-be real estate photographers within your marketplace, from the national chains right down to the independents. And you have to cut through that noise and distinguish yourself if you want to establish a successful business. So for new photographers just starting out, iGuide provides a very unique value proposition to that agent that a lot of the traditional real estate photographers can't offer. Your services are more holistic, where yes, you're offering great photography, but you're also offering floor plans, room measurements, their floor area calculations, and the 3D tour. So what that does is for that new photographer, it creates a very unique value proposition. For our existing real estate photographers, those that come to us who already have established successful businesses, it becomes more about what can I do to bump up the value of my time, the value of my transactions or my clients? And that's where, again, where iGuide comes in. So we run into a lot of real estate photographers who, I go out and I do a shoot and I make $150. How do I make that visit worth $300? How do I make more off each one of those visits? And that, again, is where iGuide comes in, and it's coming in with real value, real things that buyers want to see and agents want to provide. And again, what I'll do is I'll jump in here, and Brandon, I'll probably reference this or try to reference this a few times in the conversation, is the research reports produced annually by the National Association of Realtors, and now Zillow's gotten into it, and JD Powers does it. These are reports where these three groups will go out and they will survey home buyers and home sellers on the transaction, what was good, what wasn't good. And when it comes to, there's one section, Section 3 of the home buying process within the National Association of Realtors survey report. What are the tools that buyers want to see when they're searching for a home? Number one is always photos. Number two is property details. So those are the room measurements and the floor area calculations. Number three is floor plans. Number four is virtual tours. And number five is neighborhood information. Videos on that list, I believe it's down at number 9. There's a number of things, but with any business, it's what do you want to serve the needs of the consumer. And really, we might not be realtors, but we are in the business of helping realtors sell properties. So we need to address the needs of their customers. And that's what those top 5 things are: photos, floor plans, room measurements, virtual tours, and neighborhood information.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense to me because I kind of lived through it myself. I started out just doing photos, and in the early days, that wasn't enough to sustain a full-time business. And so I started offering flyers and God only knows what else, everything I could possibly do to bring up that, like you said, that cost per visit to help sort of justify or validate the business. I think a lot of real estate photographers out there all over the world have been in that exact same position. So again, we talk about adding tools to the tool belt or value adds or offerings to our services to make our business sufficient. I think at a certain point, a lot of photographers get to a point where they say, okay, I'm going to be a full service real estate marketing business, or at this point, I'm going to peel off and I'm going to be, I'm going to specialize in interiors and kind of take that jump. But the bulk of, I think, real estate photographers, at least a lot of the folks I speak to, are always looking for, again, those products, technology, services that'll help set them apart and grow their business. And again, be able to sort of kind of be that one-stop shop for the realtors, because the realtors appreciate that as well. So that actually brings me to another question I had. We talk about value add and setting ourselves apart from the competition, things like that. So if I look at my market, for example, I'm in a small market, 100,000 people, but I still do have 6 or 7 photographers that I compete with. Are they full-time focused professionals? Not necessarily, but they're enough to cause a problem in my business in the sense that they can charge half of what I do because it's just a part-time thing for them. So let's say, for example, I say, hey, you know what, I really want to set myself apart from these guys outside of just the photography side of things. And I want to make sure that I'm offering everything I need to that my clients have nowhere else to go or no reason to go anywhere else. I go ahead and purchase an iGuide camera system to set myself apart. What's stopping the guy next door to say, well, hey, I can offer the exact same thing, so he no longer has an edge?
Well, the great news for that is we've seen that model tested and not work very effectively. So when you look at one of our significant competitors, that it's not the same, but we're in the same space, has developed a camera system that's used for 3D mapping. And they sold their camera to anyone and everyone, and we saw that 2 things weren't very effective. Number one, the markets were overrun with cameras, and nobody was really able to produce sustainable business based on that hardware. And then number two, that created what everybody says, race to the bottom. So what is the easiest way to differentiate and compete on a commodity? It's with price. So our goal and our ambition is to build a network of iGuide operators who can rely on us, and we can rely on them to go out and build the marketplace. That's not necessarily saying that there's only going to be one operator per market. Oftentimes, there's room for one or more operators depending on the size of that market, but we are focused on our operators building healthy, successful, sustainable businesses. That's what we want to do. We don't want fly-by-nights. There's a lot of other avenues that we want these iGuide systems to be working, and in order to be working and available for those other markets, we need operators out there able to offer that service up.
So you guys are a Canadian-based company. I've mentioned that I'm based in Northern Alberta, which is also in Canada. But this is a technology and a product that is being used already sort of all over the world. Where else is your client base?
Currently, we have operators in Australia, New Zealand, Germany, the US, and Canada. So we now have more operating teams outside of Canada than we do inside of Canada. But we are primarily focused, a lot of our attention, a lot of our resources are being focused on developing the US market.
Can you share or give some sort of insight as to how many operators you have in the US, or how many states or jurisdictions you're working in right now down south?
Well, we have a team. Our operator network consists of roughly 160 teams, that many of whom are running multiple cameras. And although we are not in all states, because I do know off the top of my head, we've got some holes in the Midwest. By and large, we're kind of filling in pockets all over the U.S. and a lot of the major centers.
Again, going back, we mentioned the idea of, as real estate photographers, we're always looking for that next product or service or technology that can kind of help take things to the next level for us. So what is iGuide doing, or what do you offer to help individual real estate photographers build their business?
Well, the nice thing is we started out as a real estate photography company. It was really important to us to learn the business before we go out and try to start selling our hardware and our software to the industry. So we opened our first 10 markets ourselves to learn what it's like to run a real estate photography business, hire additional photographers, scheduling, booking, office presentations. How do we actually go out and market and understand the realtor? So we took all that knowledge and learning and used that to help us establish our first operating teams, independent operating teams. And what we've done is we've developed systems, playbooks, and tools for our iGuide pros, our iGuide teams, to go out and build iGuide in their local market. And that's one of the things that I think is really important and really relevant, and something that we're often asked is, we're not overly known or recognized as a brand, in particular in the United States. In Canada, it's very different. We've got the vast majority of the business in Canada. We are now the nation's largest real estate content creators, but we don't have that in the United States. And what we rely on is our network of operators to go out and build their business. We want to be the tool behind the company, not the product, not the brand that everybody knows. We want to be that tool within their toolbox. If you're a builder, people don't hire you because you've got a Hilti drill. People hire you because you're a good home builder. We want to be that Hilti drill. We are the best drill you've got in order to build that home. but it's not about us, it's about you and your business.
In our industry, when we're looking for that product or that service or that technology, usually it's a one-time deal. Sort of wham and bam, you get your thing, whether it's a service or a product, and then you're on your own to decide how you're going to move with it and use it to your advantage and set yourself apart. So I think as things move forward, support, ongoing support, especially from folks, like you said, opening your own first, 10 or 12 markets on your own, you figured out kind of what needed to be done and be able to, when you can photocopy that and lend that to your clients moving forward to help them be successful in their markets, I think there's a lot of value in that because it's something that we don't see very often.
Yeah, and our approach has often been, and what we do when we work with our operators is brand names, they come and they go. If you're fortunate, you've got one of those brand names that will transcend time, and we'd love to be here 100 years down the road with iGuide still being a household name. However, we do know that great photography, floor plans, room measurements, and floor area calculations, and possibly even virtual tours will be here in the long term. So for us, it's more important to work with our operators and build awareness and demand for the services than the brand name. You know, we want our operators to be known as they've got phenomenal photography, but they also give me my floor plans, they do my measurements, they do my floor areas, and I get a virtual tour. It's more about the services that we offer than the actual iGuide brand itself.
So I've gotten to know iGuide a little bit. We've had some conversation. I've spoken to your team quite often. I have a pretty good handle on the technology, and I can't help but see the similarities with another technology out there that's pretty widespread and well known, and that's Matterport. So yeah. How would you say you're different from, I don't know, I would assume Matterport's your main competition, and if so, how would you say you guys are different from Matterport?
Well, first off, we're honored to be considered Matterport's main competition, given this sheer brand recognition that they've got worldwide. But we are very different, and what I'd like to do is come back to you and answer that question based on whose lens are you looking through. Are you asking that in the context of a real estate photographer, in the context of an agent, or in the context of a home buyer that's trying to learn more about a property? Because we're very different for each of those user groups.
Interesting. So answering a question with a question put me on the spot here. I guess at the end of the day, I think all three, because really as a real estate photographer, when we're offering a service, we need to be in touch with all those different perspectives. So when I sit down and let's say I'm going to use iGuide as part of my marketing plan or a service that I'm going to offer, how am I explaining to, I mean, I guess as a real estate photographer, I need to know the difference between Matterport and iGuide. As a home buyer or as a realtor, it's kind of irrelevant. All they really care about is what's going to be the best service to their client, because things kind of trickle downhill, right? What I offer to my realtor is what they can offer to their seller, and ultimately that's what's really going to dictate what direction we take the business. So if you could kind of help me understand, I think more importantly for this, it's more as a real estate photographer, if I'm sitting here saying, hey, you know, I'm getting some requests for 3D tours, I'm getting some requests for measurements, floor plans, all that kind of stuff. I know Matterport's out there, I'm hearing about iGuide. You know, what's the differences? How do I make a decision on what direction to take and what, in terms of what technology I should be purchasing and putting in my offering?
Well, I'll answer that, and in particular, related to the real estate photographer, impact on the business and impact on the bottom line. One of the fundamental differences is our speed of capture. You can be in and out of a 3,000 square foot home with iGuide data in under 30 minutes. And I know the responses for Matterport and a lot of the other technologies that are out there is different. Some people have said that they've gotten quite efficient, but you know, by and large, I hear 1,000 square feet an hour to capture some of these other 3D technologies. Well, my guess is, and being a member of your forum and seeing some of the photographers that are out there running the businesses, it would be very difficult to sell one of those tours and make as much money per hour doing it as they would shooting their photos. Like, let's assume, for instance, that your one of your members is able to go out and shoot photos for a 3,000 square foot home in an hour. So benchmark is 3,000 square foot home, and to keep the numbers easy for me because my math is weak, $100 for a 3,000 square foot home in 1 hour. That means their time is worth $100 an hour. So in order to sell that same tour, to make that same $100 per hour, if it took 3 hours to shoot that 3D tour, they'd need to tack on an additional $300. Well, that math doesn't work. Where iGuide does work is if they're shooting those photos in an hour, then if the iGuide takes in half an hour, they only need to tack on $50. So sell that tour and photos for $150, and they're earning the same value per hour. Their time is worth the same. And that is the biggest deal, is recognizing the value of your time in the home. And because that is one of the major complaints that we've heard about some of these other technologies, it just takes far too long for me to make any money at it. That's huge, and that's where iGuide comes in. We are a phenomenal bolt-on technology that allows our operators to make the same, often better money per hour, better profit by incorporating the iGuide in. The other thing too is, in terms of, for that real estate photographer, distinguishing themselves from other things in the marketplace. A lot of those other 3D tour technology companies will not confidently provide that agent with their room measurements and their floor area calculations. Everybody now has gotten into the floor plan, so for the most part, any 3D tour technology will give you a floor plan. It's not necessarily reliable, but with the iGuide, because of the reliability and the confidence we have in the data we're providing, we're able to give you your room measurements, your floor area calculations, your floor plans, your 3D tour, and your photos. So it really is far more of a value add with no additional time requirements. Like, nobody can offer everything that we're offering in one step. That is the biggest difference for real estate photographers, making value and profitability out the back end with our technology is far better. For the agents, so to answer how are we different for the agents, it's again focused on the services that we're providing. One of the great things about iGuide is how fast we can be in and out of that home. Far less disruptive on the agent's time because their time is valuable, and if they're not there and they saddle us with the seller, far less disruption on the seller's time. You know, we're in and out quick, we're efficient, and we're able to turn around and deliver the services that they need. You know, we provide them with their room measurements, their floor areas, their floor plans, their 3D tour, and their photos. It's a complete bundle. It's a complete turnkey solution, and agents are constantly telling us, because I'm often out working with our operators in the markets, doing presentations and meet and greets with agents. They love the fact that in one call, all these things are taken care of. It's a one-stop marketing shop for them. On top of that, as well as some of the things that we're doing, some of the unique features of iGuide that help them at the back end of the transaction that nobody else is doing. You know, the iGuide becomes a planning tool for that buyer after they've committed to buy. And what does that do for the agent? It reduces calls, it reduces emails, it reduces the walkthroughs, trips to the house. It becomes a fantastic tool that simply offloads a lot of that back-end hassle onto the iGuide while giving the buyer and the buyer agent a phenomenal experience by giving them 24-hour access to the information they need. Which, again, percolating further down, what is our value to the end market? Well, the sellers know that floor plans sell homes. I mean, we've proven that with the new home market. The fact that those floor plans of 8-year-old condos are still circling around means people want them. So there's absolutely value in providing a floor plan to your consumers. And buyers, we know that definitively we are giving them the tools that they want to see and want to use when they're searching for a home. We might not have, we love our virtual tour, but it may not be gamified. It might not have a dollhouse functionality that so many people talk about. But what we do have is practicality. We are a very practical tool for anyone invested in learning about a property.
Yeah, so Kevin, we're doing this sort of having this discussion around iGuide, and it's August of 2018. So over time, technology and pricing and all that kind of stuff is going to change. But I'm hoping that you could give the readers an idea of just your pricing structure in general. Like, obviously, I'm sure there's a cost to acquire hardware. I'd like to know a little bit more about if there's an ongoing subscription or hosting cost. And then also, where can people go down the road if, let's say, someone's reading this article 2 years down the road, where can they go to get updated information on pricing, structures, and all that kind of stuff?
There are two components to our pricing. There is the hardware software cost, and then there is the individual iGuide processing cost. For exact dollar figures, you can go to our website, goiguide.com, because, as you said, that's a very good point. Numbers could change over time, and we don't want to be sharing information that may be subject to change. We do not charge any subscriptions or any membership. Every iGuide that is created, that data is sent from the photographer to us. And what we do is we process it, we assemble it, and we send it back in the form of the iGuide report for a fee. Think of back in the day, pre-digital photographers, where you take your film into the store and you receive back your pictures. That's our business model. We exchange film for photos for a fee in the digital era. That is our cost. With that, though, we do provide 1 year of complimentary hosting. We don't have a model right now to charge for any ongoing hosting, but we cannot sell unlimited hosting because we can't guarantee, as actually something you alluded to earlier, Brandon, we can't guarantee forever hosting. To circumvent that, we provide every one of our clients, or any iGuide that is created, we provide a downloadable file. So you can take that and host it yourself wherever you want to make sure that it is always active, it is always ongoing. And should we ever down the road charge some sort of fee for ongoing hosting, you will have the ability to take that hosting somewhere else.
So that brings up an interesting question, because we talked about this earlier. Can you clarify for me what you just said? I had a commercial property that was 20,000 square feet, and they were moving a tenant in. So I did a pre-move-in scan in the place of a move-in inspection, so that they literally had a walkthrough of this property prior to this tenant coming in. At the time, again, this was falling on my shoulders, but I didn't realize they were signing a 5-year lease with a 5-year option to renew, not a 2-year lease. And so I charged pretty good money to get that scan done, and then realized, oh my gosh, I need to have the same technology and hosting in 5 years, maybe even 10, to follow through on my commitment of this scan. Of course, I searched high and low for an option or an opportunity to be able to download that, but it's not available. So I'm paying a monthly hosting fee until the end of that, not to mention the fact that the technology might even be null and void by the time it's time to do the scan again, and I'm going to have a very upset corporate client, plus I'm going to have lost a bunch of money. So can you just clarify for me that with the iGuide, you can download, once you do your scan and have your tour, you can download your own copy of that data and have it kind of indefinitely?
Absolutely. So outside of real estate or conventional residential real estate, we've got a very robust market for iGuides in commercial, architectural, engineering spaces, even for high secure private facilities, where they do not want the iGuide existing on the cloud or somewhere that the public could get access to it. So it's downloadable. When your iGuide is complete, we send you an email, and it's called our iGuide report with all your links. It's really created for the agent to get all the iGuide data, but in there is a downloadable iGuide file, or we call it the offline iGuide. So you as an operator or your client can then take that iGuide, download it, and host it on your own servers and point to it. We also have a lot of clients in property management, so apartments, they never want these things to go down. They want them to exist in perpetuity. So a lot of our property management clients will grab their iGuides and they will host on their own servers so that they're always there, always accessible. So yes, you do not pay ongoing subscription and hosting fees. You have the ability to take that iGuide at any point and host it wherever you'd like. So you wouldn't get stuck with a 5-year contract hosting fee for one client.
Oh man, not my finest moment, I'll tell you.
Hindsight's 20/20.
So one of the issues I've had is that the current technology that a lot of people are using out there maxes out at a certain square footage. I've had requests in the past to shoot massive warehouses, 100,000 square feet, 150,000 square feet, and I've just simply had to turn down the opportunity. Can iGuide technology handle that kind of a request?
The answer is absolutely. We built it with that in mind. We built the technology with large spaces in mind. We've got a video of Chris White, our head of training and development, who shot a 180,000 square foot former aircraft warehouse in 3.5 hours. And that's where we strive. We've shot hospitals. We've shot prisons. We've shot shopping centers. A lot of our operators, our iGuide pros, have really started to branch out into this commercial business because it is so profitable. The bigger the space, the faster they are in and out of it. So their profitability goes through the roof. And absolutely, nobody would ever turn down, no iGuide pro would ever turn down business because of constraints on size in our technology. That is absolutely a tremendous strength of what we're doing and what the iGuide system can offer. So yeah, large spaces, absolutely.
In my market, measurements they're not only critical, they're mandatory. You're literally held responsible legally for the measurements that you represent in your listings. I know in Canada that is a movement that's happening. I don't know how far away it is to be standardized across the country, but it is something it's definitely going that direction. Are you aware of other markets or jurisdictions that are either mandating this or at least moving in that direction, whether it's the US, UK, other clients that you've got?
It's all over the place. So literally yesterday, I was on the phone with the Greater Nashville Association of Realtors and RealTrax, who runs the Mid-Tennessee MLS system. They have mandatory room dimensions and mandatory square footage. They are a requirement of listing. It's all over the United States, just the same way it's all over Canada. You've got markets that mandate it, markets that don't. Markets that do, markets that don't. Both sides of the border. What we're seeing, though, is a more concerted effort towards mandating it. Like Alberta, it's the first school teacher that made the classroom do everything. Like, instead of individual boards mandating it, that's the first province or state that mandated it. That's what we're seeing happen, is it becoming mandatory in more and more markets. But there's no more boards requiring it in Canada than I would expect there are in the United States, because we see it all over the place. Where I know North Carolina, there's a huge push for there's a lot of mandatory measurements and square footages. I know in Nashville, for instance. So markets all over the place where it is a requirement. It's happening on both sides of the border, and I think it's being driven by buyers and sellers. We're we're honored that this independent voice for independent photographers took the time to interview us and learn about us and learn about our technology. And I really hope that this didn't sound advertorial at all, that at the end of the day, yeah, we believe we've got an amazing product, and we've got hundreds of photographers standing behind us saying we've made their business great. So we'd like hundreds more. There's no doubt about it. I mean, that's why we're here. That's why we're doing this interview. We want to continue to grow our network, particularly in the United States and Australia and in New Zealand, and eventually fill in Europe. But we believe that we've got a phenomenal product, and we're building a phenomenal team. And people in our network, you can go anywhere. They trust us and they respect us, and we think we've got a pretty good thing going on.
Well, that's great. And again, our goal is to help make real estate photographers successful. So anything that we can do to connect the independent photographers, any photographers in general, with information and keeping them up to date and informed with technologies that are out there, that's sort of, at the end of the day, that's our game and that's our goal. So I appreciate you taking some time to sit down and kind of get the information right from the horse's mouth, so that there's no wondering. And I wish you guys luck. And again, thank you very much for taking some time to sit down with us.
Well, thanks for having us, and wish you the best of luck as well with this transition, this exciting time that PFRE is going through. I know I've been a huge supporter since I started in this industry and found you in 2012, and been quietly watching and listening and learning a lot from you. So thank you very much. It was the feeling's mutual. I appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. Well, thank you.